session is to, hopefully solve a bit of a problem and a bit of a concern for teachers in Malta at the moment, round the whole unfortunate circumstance of hygiene and obviously the COVID situation, getting back to school, and the natural concerns that you're all going to have over simple things like doing the practicalities of the teaching and learning aspects of the job, of giving the work to the students, and what do you do with your workbooks, with the mark books and the copy books that the children are using. What are you going to do? Give them the work, stick it in the cupboard, wait a couple of days for any virus to disappear before you start marking it, and then wait another couple of days before you give it back to the students so that they can receive the work. The challenge there is obviously you need to stay safe, and the possibility of lost learning throughout that waiting period for getting the work back to the student and seeing and reviewing and correcting that work might be a challenge. The aim of this session is as follows. So, this is the challenge. Physical books, physical contact is a bit of a no-no at the moment. So the aim of this session is simply to give you some ideas and some solutions that may show you easy ways that you can provide and continue to do what you do best in the classroom, for setting homework, setting activities, being able to mark and correct those pieces of work that students submit to you, and to be able to provide feedback to your students in a timely way, and also to be able to enable children to review each other. I know some of the thought has been going in a great deal in this respect to children, how they would mark their own work, and the possibility of marking each other's work. That's a bit of a no-no, but ultimately what you need to do is keep track of where your children are with their learning, to know what they know at any given moment in time, to be able to track progress of student learning, and also to be able to keep a physical, no matter what type of physical record that you may have of what the children are doing and achieving, to be able to evidence that. J2E is obviously provided to you and works on all of the tablets that you've got, also works on mobile phone and on any desktop computer as well. The idea is that I'm going to walk you through some steps that will show you how to solve the challenges of eliminating the physical copybook, mark book, and overcoming all of that time challenge as well of marking work, but also giving you a little step up as well with some other ideas that will enable you to hopefully save a bit of time. And the little hippie in me, and I guess it's very timely for the environment as well, is thinking that in the process of doing this, we can save the environment and save some trees too, resulting in less paper being printed, paper being wasted, etc. If we can do the majority or some at least of these things online, your parents won't be worried about having to print things if they've got a printer indeed, and they won't be looking at increased costs of printer ink and the hassle that goes with having to replace those cartridges, because I know as much as anybody that that is a bit of a point and shoot and hope situation. Nothing worse than trying to plug that cartridge into the printer and not getting it quite right and having ink everywhere. Done that many times. So first of all, I'm going to take you through a process of firstly creating an activity for your students, to show you how to provide activities for your students. Now, I'm in J2E here. You log into J2E with your own iLearn credentials on j2e.com/Malta. If you have any questions on how to do that, please do put that in the chat. And I'm going to assume that you're all capable and able to do that right now. Okay, What I want to do as an educator for children is to be able to provide work for my students to do. They've got two ways of doing that. One is using pre-made activities. Something perhaps like this, which is I've just looked at the Maltese curriculum for, I think this is sort of year 3 to year 5 a writing frame, for example. So you've got some of these activities. Sorry, that's a little bit small, but you can see this, and I'm sure you recognize this as a standard activity that's been pre-prepared. And there's loads of other examples of the sort of things that you might want to use. I'm sure you've got worksheets, that you've got PDFs, that you've got documents that you might have. Here is one of the ways that you can create an activity for your students within J2E. Okay, the simple thing is, if I have a PDF such as, let me just have a look here. Let me just open up like the writing frame for postcards, for example. Just wait for that to open. So that's the Acrobat Reader opening that. I'm opening that in my own computer. I'm not opening this in J2E yet. That's just showing the Adobe Acrobat document that I've got with all of the details on it, including that. What you can do is very simply add this as an activity into J2E. If you've got a PDF, we've made it super easy for you to do this, and you simply just click on this tile called J2 PDF, and then it says choose a PDF or open a PDF. If you choose a PDF, it'll just pop up with your desktop. If you're on a computer like me, it'll open up your desktop and look, and it'll start searching for your documents. So if I want to open the writing frame for postcards, I'm just going to simply click on that, and it'll start uploading it straight away. Now, what you'll see is that is page 1, but also down the bottom here, this is now in J2E5. This is now within J2E5, and it's got multiple pages of that writing frame PDF. So that's instantly uploaded it, and I've just clicked on the top button there to show the different pages, and there is my where's my grammar? There are my 3 pages of work. Now, that's me creating a digital task for my students. I need to then share that with my children so that they know that they've got it as something that they need to do. But before I go any further, you'll realize that when a student gets this document, so pretend for a second that I am a student can now straight away write on this PDF anywhere you want. And here I am just writing in the frame. And of course, you can put anything you want in there. I'll talk more about the things that you can do with J2E in a second. So children, your students, will be able to see the activity, even though it's just a PDF that you've uploaded, but they will then be able to save their own version of that once they've written on it. And they can do anything they want. You know, you can scribble on it, you can annotate on it, as I've done with the text. You can improve it with, you know, putting your own frames on it. And if you want to be really clever, you can even, you know, rub things out. So you can make this worksheet entirely your own. I'm going to undo all of that nonsense that I've just done by clicking on the undo button, and I'm going to save it. So now what I've done is, I've uploaded that PDF into J2 PDF, and it's opened it up, and I am going to save that into J2E as postcards. And that's the name of the activity. And what will happen is, when you go back to the launch pad for J2E, you'll see that if you go into your My Files area, I'll do that just quickly. So I'm in the launch pad and I'm going to click on My Files here. And you'll see that I've got two documents. I've got the PDF there, the original PDF that you can't annotate on, but you've got this new J2E5 document. I'm just going to open that again. The J2E5 document here that children will be able to go and edit. If I want to give that to students, I can, but that was just one way of creating a digital task for my students. I could do it a different way. I could go back to my Launchpad and I could go to J2E5 and create my own digital activity that I'm then going to share with my students that they can work in completely from scratch. Sounds like a bit of a faff, but it's quite easy to do. Simply start typing anywhere and say class 5 activity for this week, and then click somewhere else and start listing the activities that you want them to do. So writing task is to make a story starter using the new vocabulary we learnt this week. Really simple stuff, but I might want to deepen the engagement, deepen the interaction by including an audio recording. So here I could add a recording if I wanted, so record some sounds, and I could perhaps even include my own version of the story with my audio recording here. So here I'm recording my version of the story, and once I've recorded that, I can then just press stop and add it to the page, and then it'll just ask me to add it to the page. Equally, if it wasn't an English activity, if this was a maths activity or a history activity, I could, or a languages activity, I could use that audio recording to explain the instructions verbally, or I could use it as an opportunity as a little mini podcast to your children about an activity that you wanted them to listen to. And in exactly the same way, I can save that document, and I'm going to call that activity 2, and I'll save that. Everything you save will always go into your own My Files area. Now, remember what I've just said there, everything that you save goes into your files area. That's exactly the same for students. So when your students are saving their work, everything will go automatically into My Files for them. But you don't have to hunt around for that, because all of your pupils' work will be visible from within this Pupil Files tab. So that's your window into all of your pupils' work that they've been submitting and saving within J2E. So you can dip into a class, see a student, go and have a look at their work. Okay, so that's two ways of doing it, of setting a digital activity for your students that's not using your standard markbook and copybook. Another way of doing that for younger learners may be using a simpler tool called J2E5, where you could set them a writing task or a painting task, for example, or even an animation task. Now, what people don't necessarily realize is immediately when you're using this tool, perhaps for writing or for painting, I'm just clicking on the paint button there as an option, you can always set it with a background theme to get started, but you don't have to do that. If I create a new one, I could use pictures I've already got. So what I could do is I could upload a picture of, say, for example, that worksheet. So this writing frame for postcards. Let me just open this out a second. And what I can do is go to the right part of the page. Let's just zoom out to then fit it in. And then I could take a little snapshot. If you're using a computer, you would use your snipping tool, I think, to do this. But then I could add that picture into my files. So what I can do is go back into my files and then simply just drag and drop that screenshot that you've just taken into here. And it's going to upload that screenshot of a postcard. So if I now open JIT and I want to go to paint and I want them to do a painting activity, I could say, look at a picture instead, and there is the picture. And there is your background to get started on writing your postcard. And the children could then use their touch on the device. I can't do that too easy here because I'm just using a trackpad. But you get the idea of being able to do that. Let me just undo that again, and I'll leave that as a blank version. So I'm going to save this myself as a teacher, because what I want to be able to do is show you how then I've got two types of activities. I've got the activity called postcards, which is a J2E5 document, and I've got a paint activity, which is the postcards activity for younger learners to be able to complete for themselves. What I would like to do now is there's two steps to being able to set this as an activity for my children to do. The first thing is I need to share this activity, share one of these activities with the right group of students that I want to be able to see it. Because if I just save it like this, my students won't ever know it's there for me to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share postcards, that activity, with my students in year 3. So I'm going to share, what I've done is I've clicked on that little green eye button over postcards, and it pops this up and it says share. So now what I need to do is simply find the class that I want to share with. So I'm clicking here on the little down arrow in the middle of the screen, and it'll then allow me to search for a particular class. Now I know I'm going to show you this by sharing it with that particular class. And as soon as I've done that, everybody who is in year 3 or year 4 will be able to see it. It says year 3/4 because I've just set up a couple of students in that class for demonstration purposes. Okay, now I've shared it with them. I'm going to do the same thing for the painting activity, which was the background postcard, but if you remember, it's within the paint tool. So what I'm going to do is again click on the little green eye button and click share, and then click on a particular class to be able to then share with that class.
Alistair, can you show them that you can also share with particular pupils? So in the case of differentiated learning, if some pupils would need a simpler task, you can share it with a specific pupil in class as well.
Thank you, Tanya. Yes. Now, if you don't want to do what I've just done, but you want to share it, as Tanya says, with a specific student or even a group of students, you can always do that too by simply typing in the name of the student if you know them. So I start typing Josh, and it then shows me all of the different Joshes that I've got, and I'm going to share that with Joshua, and I could then add more pupils in if I wish. So let me see if I can find Tanya. Yes, there's Tanya, and I can share it with Tanya. So now it's going to show me that all of these pupils are be able to see it. What I do want to be able to do is let them save a version of it for themselves as well. So I'm going to tick on these different people to say, yes, they want to be able to save their own version of that activity for themselves. Okay, and then I'm just going to get rid of that. And now if you see both the postcards and the paint activity have got that little share button up against it. So if you notice, if you're ever in My Files and you see that you've got that little extra button up the top there, that denotes that you've shared it with somebody.
Alistair, you're being asked what happens if you don't tick the save button.
Yes, so this is a new thing that we've added in. If you don't tick the save button, they'll be able to go into it, but they won't be able to save a version for themselves. Okay. So they'll be able to see the activity, but you won't actually be able to get a version of it that they've created for themselves.
But she's asking the same, Janet, basically, I think no. Will they edit her version?
Yes, that's what you don't want them to do.
If you have save next to it.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you'll still have your own version, I think, in
You
My
will
Files.
have you'll always have your own version. Yes.
So basically, you need them to save, so to be able to save it on their profile, no?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So it'll save, allow them to save a version that you will be able to then use and see for any sort of correcting or reviewing or feedback that you might want to give them.
Thanks.
Okay. Now, I did actually make another version of a file here that I'm also going to share, and I would like to share that with you as well because it didn't take me very long to do this. You can see I've got this other document down here called Animal Fact File. Let me show you that just quickly. Okay, so this is a document that a student can use. It's just been created in J2E5. I did this very quickly because this is based on another one of the Maltese curriculum activities. And all I've done is I've taken a picture in the background and I've put some text on the page and I've put some details on the page in terms of these boxes which a student could then fill in. So if a student is using this, what the children can do is, let me just lock that in place. They could just write, say, for example, a barn owl. So the student could fill this in, even though it's just something that you've created for them. And if you wanted them to, you could actually let them search for images of things like a barn owl. Let's see what happens. So then we can drag this copyright-free image into my document. So there the children can build up their work, but not only can they do that, when they have saved that version, you'll see also here on the top right hand corner of the screen is the checkboxes that I've added in for the children to be able to use from the Maltese curriculum documents. It's a simple copy and paste job that took me very little time indeed. That was the reminder of the things that the children need to do. So my report includes an introduction, subheadings, a conclusion, and a picture, for example. And the child can click a tick on each one to say, yes, I've done that. Yes, I've done that, and all the way through. And also by sending that little report, there will be a little message to say that that has gone to the teacher to say, yes, that child has thought about every single one of those things that I need to think about in writing a non-chronological report. How did I do that? Very simply, all I'm doing is using the J2E5 forms button. Okay, and that's this button up here. Let me zoom in just quickly. So there's this button here called New Form. And you can choose to use that to create anything like I've done here, such as a checkbox, a radio button, or even a text box or a drop-down list. So I've simply just put a checkbox in here, drag it onto the page, and then I can edit it to say anything as a reminder, such as I remembered to use capital letters, for example. And if you want, you can change the font. You just go to the top of the box and choose any of the fonts that you want. And then you can just drag it and put it anywhere on the page. And that becomes then part of that document as a checkbox button. So that's a way that you can incorporate all of the things from the curriculum and incorporate those into your activities that you can then share with your students. Okay, so going back to the flow of what I was hoping to talk about is I've now shown you how you could create an activity using an existing document. I've also shown you how you could create an activity for yourself in very easy to go ways. Now what I want to be able to do is actually share that with my students as an activity, as a task for them to be able to then go and do.
Alistair, Janet asked you, what about the send button?
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. When you use that forms button, good question, Jeanette. Thank you. I'm going to go and create a brand new document and I'll show you that. The forms, when you first start using that in a new document, so this is a new doc here that I'm just typing in. When I start putting forms into a new document, I'm going to click on it, and as soon as I click on one of these things, like a checkbox, the next thing it's going to ask me to do is put a send button on the page somewhere. Once I've then dropped that send button, you can put it anywhere else you want. You can pick it up again and put it anywhere else you want at any moment in time just by dragging and dropping. What that does is send the owner of the document, you the teacher, a report to say who has ticked the boxes. So you can use it in creating a quiz, you can use it as creating a vote, or you could use it as just a reminder of things like I showed you in that document. And what you'll see down the bottom of the page here is a results button as well. So right the way down the bottom of the page here, there is it's hiding behind my Teams meeting there. There is a results box there which will show you a spreadsheet which you can download of all of the things that each of your students has done, whether that is answer a question that you've put in one of those check boxes, or if it is simply just acknowledging that they have ticked all of the different things to remember that they needed to do it. I hope that answers the question, Jeanette. So it automatically puts that send button on the page, and then when children click it, it'll then send you, the teacher, a report in that document of who has done what, who's ticked what in those boxes. Okay, so great question. Thank you for that. It's good to go that deep. What I'm going to do now is I've made an activity. I've shared it, so I know that it's physically viewable by a specific group of children that I want it to be going to. Those children could go into shared files and see it there. For example, if I go in and open a brand new window and I go j2e.com and I've signed in as Eli, Eli could go into his shared files area and see in his class that these two documents have been shared with him. It's a little bit clunky doing it that way. Useful because it's a bit like, well, you've got your own version of Dropbox built in there. But what I'd like to be able to do is show you how to set that activity as a homework task. Now, remember, when you went into My Files and you went into the activity to share it with clicking on the green button, when you click on that little green button, all you need to do is copy this website address, which is the address, which is the web link to that activity. I'm going to do that Command C or Control C thing of copying it, that text in there. Don't need to worry too much about what that does. But when I go into J2 homework, this is going to be setting that activity as a specific activity for my students so that they can see an order and structure to the activities that I'm setting them, and they will be able to tick off that they've done it. How it works is really straightforward. A few steps. Click on J2 homework, and you can see that I haven't got any activities here, either to complete for myself or activities that I've already assigned to students. But I can have a look at ones that have expired by clicking on that little button there. So yeah, that's some previous activities that I've been setting up. I'm now going to assign a new piece of homework. So I'm going to click the plus button, and there are 5 steps. 4 really, but you could use the 5th step if you want to. First of all, I'm going to give it a title. A word to the wise on this one, I'd always say something about the date and the activity that you want them to do so that they can see that there is a semblance of a description to it. So I'm going to say writing task for the 30th of September this week. Or if you wanted to just keep it to your activity and the children know that that's the activity that you're doing this week, it would be writing postcards. So give it a good description of what the activity is. Also, you can then give them a written instruction of what you'd like them to do. So the task here would be complete the postcard with all of the checkboxes ticked to make sure you check your work properly. Always type so badly when I'm under pressure. What I'm going to do next is I've given it a title and a description, but I want to share that specific resource of the postcards activity with students. And here I'm going to paste. So I'm going to do that Command V thing or Control V thing of pasting that web link into there. And that's all I need to do. I want to give it a due date to say to my children that it's going to be due perhaps on the 6th of October. But if I might not want to schedule it yet and give it to them immediately, I might want to say, well, that activity is something I don't want to give them until next week, for example. But in fact, I am going to make it available for them straight away. What you can do also is you can then select a whole class by just ticking on a class that you want to be able to see that activity and that homework set. Or you could select any particular users that you want. And here, this is just showing all of the children that I've got. I could always just go into a particular class and then only check a particular student from, I'll go to a different class, I'll get Arturo in there, and then he's been selected. So I can select a whole class, a whole group, or just individual students. One of the additional things that you can do that will complement the work that you're setting them, if you want to take it to this level, is just give them another audio recording, just as a quick way of reminding them what the activity is. And children really do love and respond to hearing your voices when you're setting these instructions up for them to do. They feel empowered and they are much more likely to really, I mean, research does show us that the students are much more likely to give it their best shot at doing that activity if you've given them a bit of an audio description to it as well. Simply just press record to start the recording and press record again to stop the recording, and there you'll have the recording at the bottom of the screen. That is all you need to do to then click the plus button and assigning the homework. Now, what Eli will see when Eli goes into J2E is he now has a homework task to do. So Eli's logged in as a student and he has got the activity of writing postcards. Okay. He has the option to listen to the recording, and he can go straight to the homework. And here, Eli can then start working in the homework. And so he can put that in, and he might want to put a picture of a stamp on there as well. So yeah, old stamp can go on there, and then put his address in there and save his work. And he can call it postcards because that's his own version of it. Here we go. What that will mean is, let me just close that down a second. For Eli, he could also go into the homework and say, I've done it. So he can mark it off complete. So he can say that he's done it. So it shows for him, just shows for Eli that he's got a little tick against it. So he can really take control of managing the workload that he has got. And if there's anything that has expired, that's gone past its date for due in, he could also show, oh my goodness, he's got rather a lot of things to catch up on. Or he could always change his mind and go, actually, I haven't finished it. So untick it and mark it incomplete so he can go back in and have a look at it. But for now, we'll leave it there for Eli to do. So if I open homework again, here is my homework task that I set for my students. I'm now logged on as a teacher. And it says who I've assigned it to, and it says who's completed it. Now, the great thing is here, I have the option of the teacher to go and click on Eli and to see when he completed his work, at what time. That's really interesting because it'll actually show you when your students were most engaged, and if it was first thing in the morning, literally before they're about to step out the door to go to school, you'll know that the work is possibly not as higher quality as you would expect it to be. But in this way, I can then go and click straight away to see Eli's work and open it. Now, I've shown you how to create the task. I've shown you how to upload a PDF or make your own version of the task as well, and how to share it with students and set it as a homework activity. And you've seen that workflow of being able to see that work itself from when the student has submitted it to you. Really easy to find the work because it takes you straight to that activity and shows you that work. Now, the fun job is where we can actually mark the work, and you've got a few choices of how you might want to do that. So here I am, I'm looking at Eli's work, and I can quite easily click on the work. I'm logged on as a teacher, and straight away I can see Eli's put a stamp on it and he's written his name. So he's sort of half completed that activity. The choices that I've got when I'm looking at Eli's work are either I can mark his work in his work. So if I feel that I want to let him level up and progress and achieve a higher standard of work, I might want to simply just open up his work and start to write in line in that document. So I might want to tell my students, if you see some particular colored writing on your work, that's me that's writing on your work. So what I would recommend you do is, if you want to write on your students' work, is go to the side of the page and start to give some feedback. To maybe extend his thinking a little bit further. But what I would also recommend, as I've just said, is always choosing a particular color that your students will recognize that is you and is there. But also, you could add anything you want on this page. You could also draw on that page, and you could perhaps even add an audio recording to that page as well. So you're not touching anything. You quite clearly able to see his work and also give great feedback to Eli. But if you wanted to, you could always record a sound there too. Now, what if you might want to do is you could even add a video in here. And if you've recorded a video of yourself on a mobile phone, for example, you could upload that into here to give Eli a better understanding of the task that perhaps he might be struggling with.
Can you repeat, please? You're being asked how to correct the pupil's work.
Okay, great. Okay, so for example, I'm looking at Eli's work here. And if I want to correct the work, I could either allow Eli to read the comments at the side of the work that he's done. So I can put comments at the side of the work to give Eli some feedback, feed forward, feed up, whatever you would like to, whatever kind of style and flavor of formative assessment that you wish to use. And if you wish, you could always strike through anything that you don't think is quite correct, and then leave some annotation at the side at the side of the page, and you say remember capital letters, and then we could put that next to it. But always do try to use a similar font that you might want to use, perhaps not red, because I think that's a bit of a threatening color to writing feedback in, but it's entirely your choice as to what you would do. So that is one way of providing feedback and correcting the work, or providing an opportunity for your students to be correcting their work. Because remember, if you save it like that, it's going to save it in Eli's work. It's not saving it in the master document, that is saving it in Eli's work. Okay, so when Eli opens up that document himself, let's go to J2E, log on as Eli, and he'll see that writing postcards activity. Oh, I've opened it up again as a brand new document. Eli can just go into his My Files and see that he's got his document there, and you'll see that it has got the annotation that you, the teacher, has given him. So Eli can then, perhaps remove some of the annotation that you've given, and also then go in to correct the details himself by putting in some better details. So that's how you can not only provide feedback and provide some correcting opportunities for your students, but also to really level up the students' work for themselves. The other way that you may want to provide feedback for your students is, now I'm looking at the homework. Remember, I went into homework and I clicked on Eli's work, and it takes me to Eli's work there to see. If I don't want to go into Eli's work, the other option I've got is to provide feedback alongside the work in a learning conversation. So I'm now not going to go and scribble all over Eli's work and ruin his hard work, but I'm going to provide some comment that he will see when he logs in. And what it's going to do is pop up a learning conversation. Here, I can give Eli exactly the same sort of feedback, but it doesn't affect the look of everything that he's put into his document. So I can say, Eli, well done. Now think, or can you think about, you think of other people you may wish to write to. Add these as other examples in your homework. So not only does this give Eli a very good way of seeing the feedback that you want to give to your students, but also it gives Eli an opportunity to perhaps ask you a question about the work that has been set. So what you'll see here is there's a number. When Eli logs in, there's a number against his My Files. That means there are 17 comments by teachers against work that he has done. I look in My Files, bang, straight away, you can see there is a little speech bubble over Eli's work. Let's open that up. I can see that, and I can then go back in and say, thank you, Mr. C, giving myself a title there. I can't think of any other people I want to write to other than Father Christmas. Or he might say, what do you mean? Can you explain a little bit further? And if that does require a little bit further explanation, let's go back here. And now you'll see that there are, and that's turned red for me as the teacher because I can see that Eli has commented. So here, I might want to then give Eli some additional feedback and say, come on, Eli, I know you can think of the things that we talked about in class, the different type of people that you wanted to write to. Perhaps one of them was somebody that you know very well and that you haven't seen for a long time. And then click OK to add that to the page. And now Eli will be able to listen to me speaking some instruction to him too. All of that has taken place without ever having to touch a piece of paper, and happens, as you can see, instantly, meaning that your students can remain on task very quickly. One of the challenges behind that is when you start to interact with your students in this way, there may come the expectation, which your students will never understand, that there is a teacher life and a personal life. So my recommendation to you would be to always set the bar with your students to say, I am going to be online to comment and feedback on your work at this particular time for half an hour. So if you want to have a chat and you want to ask me questions about the work, that half an hour is yours to do so. And remember that, so that they know that if they've been trying to get you to comment and give feedback on a particular piece of work on a Sunday afternoon, and unless I've stipulated that I'm going to be online at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday to just have a quick conversation and catch up with students, if they're not doing it at that time, then they won't get a response from me immediately. The way I've always played it is to say to my students, I'm going to be online 15-20 minutes on a Sunday at 4 o'clock, but that's the way that I worked best.
Al, can I interrupt you? Because we have
Always.
a question from Rebecca. Basically, she's asking if you can log the feedback so the children do not remove it. Personally, I think, and I've seen it working in certain schools, that the teachers allowed students to remove the feedback once the work was edited. Because as you said, it does spoil the work a bit, seeing it all scribbled. So as long as the children edited, the teachers I've worked with, it was okay. Once you edit the work, you can remove the teacher's feedback. But I don't know if there is a lock feature, because the idea is to improve the writing. It is the writing process. So it's not just correcting.
Yeah. And in the process of completing the activity, you want to be able to let them develop the work. It's entirely your choice. And Rebecca, you're right to question that. Can they remove it? If you want to, you can be a little bit sneaky. Let me show you how. You can go into the work, and I'm going to just click on edit so that I can do that. Now, if I want to, say this feedback here, what you can do is click on this button down the right hand side, which locks it to the page, which your inquisitive student may work out that they can unlock in the future, but at least for a while it will remain there, that you can't do anything with it. You can't select it, you can just write over it. It just locks it to the back of the page, but children that click on it might go that extra step to unlock it. If you are concerned about doing that and losing the feedback, then my recommendation to you would be to use the the learning conversations that I've just shown you.
Can you show them how to lock and unlock again, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you're doing anything, if you're creating a J2E5 document or if you're editing a J2E5 document, this is a handy tip to have. You can do it for anything, whether it's a picture, whether it's a video, or any text. So let me give you an example. I'm going to write some text on the page and just say hello, and I'll make that big so that's obvious. Now, if you notice, I can click on that. Yeah, I'm now going to add a picture of that barn owl onto the page again, make that a little bit bigger. Whoopsie. And you can see that I can click on it and select it. Or I could always do a YouTube video in exactly the same way. The same principle applies. But if I double click on it and then click on lock, it will lock it to the page. Let me do that for an example with what I use. I use this quite a lot, of using an image in the background. So I'm going to just level that out, put it to the top of the page, and then I'm going to put this barn owl, make it massive, but I'm going to lock it to the page. So I've now clicked on lock, and that means I can't, oops, I've got that, I've opened it up again. I can't do anything. I can't select that activity, but I can put stuff on top of it now. So literally I could then put, drag a picture and put that onto the page and move it anywhere I wanted to, but it means that that's locked to the page. And similarly, if I lock that image to the page, I'm just going to click on lock again, and now I can start to type on the top of that, and it would ignore those previous things that I've put on the page. Hopefully that's explained a little bit easier how to lock things to the page. So simply, if you want to make something immovable from your page in J2E5, simply just double tap on it so that you can see those little corners appear, and then click lock, and it'll lock it to the page.
I have another query now from someone else, from Martina. If the exercise is a wrong or right exercise, can you record yourself correcting it, annotating it along with a voice recording, and then share it with all the other students to view? So basically, it's a right or wrong exercise. I assume it's like a sort of quiz. Martina, can you?
Yeah, I mean, you can create a quiz using forms doing
I'm not sure if it's a quiz. Martina, can you unmute yourself? So
yeah, it'd be nice to hear a little bit more context to what you'd like to do there, Martina.
Hi.
Hi.
What I wanted to mention is that, for example, you have a maths exercise and you have a right or wrong answer. So, for example, whatever, a simple maths exercise. You wouldn't have to correct each and every one. So maybe you could upload one document with yourself correcting the exercise so all the students can view it.
So you'd create one document that all of his children would be able to do. Yeah, you can do that, and I would use a form to do that. So, for example, let's just create a maths activity here. And I did one the other day, actually. And I've got one here that I might be able to use. Yeah, here we go. So, like this.
Yes, exactly.
A very simple one. So I've just made this in J2E5. And what I may want to do is, instead of doing it like this, where I've got a box for them to just simply write their answer in, if you wanted to automate it, you could absolutely do that by including a form. So I could add a drop list and give it multiple choice. So I could drop this in here and then just put a send at the top of the page, and then instead of being a yes or no, oops, done the wrong thing, sorry. Instead of being a yes or no, I would, sorry, my forms are being a little bit funny here. Why is it doing this? I'm not quite sure why my forms aren't letting me do what I want to do. Here we go. Right, okay, so at the top of the page, let me just get rid of that. So once I've put the form on the page, I could then say the answer was 5. Go down the next one, go 8 and 9. And straight away you're seeing that's updated it, which means that if I go into view mode, the answer would be either 5, 8, or 9, because those are the choices that I've given my students. And then when I click send, you will be given a spreadsheet of all of the students that have completed the activity, showing you which of them got it right or wrong.
Thanks a lot for your help.
Okay, giving you some ideas. I sort of just stole this idea of doing something as simple as this from you know, some very, very good resources that are out there on the web. And it could have been simply that I just took a PDF, like I've shown you how to do that PDF upload, and then simply make it fully automatic. So I've done nothing but upload it, and it's then given it to it so your students can edit it and annotate on it, etc. But then just adding that form onto the page gives you the choice of you know, making it an interactive PDF. So you can save yourself a ton of time if you have got an existing PDF, and if you want to just think about how to make it interactive by adding, because it could be anything. It could be a history question, for example, about you know, the Roman soldiers, for example, and you know, choosing the different outfits for the Roman soldiers, or correctly identifying the different parts of a Roman soldier's costume. You could put the right or wrong words in that drop down. So using it as an example here, just double clicking on it, go back to that drop list and say helmet, and then changing that 8 to spike, and then to boots, and then straight away you'll view that, and you know, in the middle of a sentence you could have those words that the children can then choose. I hope that makes sense.
You have another question from Janet. Basically, when you were correcting the work and you were writing it on the side of the screen, out of the printable area, basically, if you put it out of the writing border, when published, will it show? Because obviously, Janet is at the stage of publishing on the blogs.
Yes, yes,
on
yes.
Webby.
Okay, and that's another way for you to do it. And I didn't really go there with peer feedback. Obviously, I've only talked about teacher feedback. And that, for those of you that aren't familiar, the opportunity to allow your students to publish their work if they are happy with the work that they've done. For example, postcards. When the student is editing their work, if they press the publish button, it'll save their work where it's at, but it'll give them the choice of publishing it to the blog, which means that other children in the school will be able to read that blog. And if they press publish, don't worry, it won't publish it to the blog straight away. The teacher will always have to moderate it. So it says here to the student, you know, you can see this postcards has been posted to the Year 3-4 site, but your work won't be shown until your teacher has approved it. Okay. When you do that, if there is anything at the side of the page, it won't show because it's always going to be in view mode. But if you've done things like this, it will then show because it's slightly creeping into the page. But that's the reason why you've got that frame there. So anything outside that frame. If you notice, though, that the frame can change size from landscape to portrait, but if you leave it outside of either of those modes, it will not include it into the the published article. But if it is something that's going to be published and you've asked your students to go through the process of putting it onto the class blog, I would recommend that you don't use your inline annotation on the work, because that will upset your students who've been working very hard on producing a piece of work for you.
What some teachers have been doing, the ones we've worked with, basically in this space they would write the misspelled words, so the children would just correct them and remove it. The comments then they would be placed in the learning conversation. But just imagine they have some spelling mistakes or grammatical ways how they phrase their sentence. The teacher would write it at the side. The child would come and edit the work, and want them to edit the work to improve it. And then they could then delete these comments, but the learning conversation will obviously always remain.
Correct. Now, obviously, there's particular things that you do want them to focus on, and the challenge there, I'm sort of talking this down, these great tools down a little bit, but it's very easy to get carried away with, setting the highest bar to your students' work, and potentially, I can understand why a teacher would say, well, I don't want work to be published on a blog that is going to be viewed by teachers or parents or pupils if the work isn't perfect. Well, I would urge you not to take that attitude to it, and I would really encourage you to embrace sharing work that isn't perfect. Not as a pride thing, but simply that it's an opportunity for a conversation, and it also empowers those students that aren't necessarily up to scratch. But the point is, when a child, say Eli, posts his work like this and he is a struggling writer, what's more important, getting the capital letters right and all of that, and getting words in the right order, or using new vocabulary, or celebrating the achievement of the point at which Eli is ready to go? And he's more likely to do a better job next time if he can see that his work is up there with the best of them. That's my own thinking on it, and it's entirely your choice whether you do that, whether you just showcase perfect work or whether you showcase work that all of your children have produced to make it equitable. Do we have any more questions?
No. No. But what you were saying about the blog comments, apart from the obvious, as Alistair said, peer feedback, which is very important. So the child could then go and further improve his work if he wants to, following peer feedback. It is also very important as regards digital safety, digital citizenship, the way they comment online, even if they don't like the work. Basically, I mean, I may not like his work, I may not think it's perfect, but it doesn't mean, I have to know how to comment, and that is important as much as reading and writing, I think, nowadays, the way they are interacting with themselves, with each other online.
Yeah,
so yes,
it's not
the blog,
just about selfies and photos, but the work that they're producing as well. So in the next session, I will be going more into, and there'll be other sessions, and there's previous recordings that I've done as well, all about peer feedback and about peer review, and some hints and tips on how to do that. So I will share that previous webinar with Tanya, who can forward it on to you as well. And that's all about using the blogging tool called J2E Webby. But I hope you've enjoyed the session. I hope that's been useful for you. So we'll wrap it up there, but I will say just quickly that there are a whole bunch more sessions coming up soon. So over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks ahead, there's going to be some weekly sessions around this sort of time as well. So it won't just be me, so don't worry, you won't get completely bored of my voice. We'll be joined by colleagues as well, and hopefully with Tanya and the team too from DLTS. But I would just like to say thank you very much to everybody today, and thank you so much to all of those wonderful questions. And I guess if you have any other questions, do get in touch with Tanya directly and she'll forward those questions on to me, and I'm more than happy to help.